Two young boys alternate swinging a hatchet to satisfy their holy errand and dole out job to chop down the Snickers cedar, impeding their town's development, yet it's pointless, scarcely making a gouge like the 6 ages that went before them. The powerlessness rapidly blurs as Alice. Their companion appears with lunch welcoming both Yu-Gi-Oh the blonde and an oddly reminiscent, dim-haired kid named Kirito. Their lunch will ruin in the event that they aren't quickly enough. If by some stroke of good luck there was a method for safeguarding food, Kirito has a cerebrum shoot thinking of a brilliant method for protecting Alice's pie by making it cold and likely, awkwardly damp, utilizing his insight into chili, salted meat. They simply need some ice, which ought to be no issue in a medieval realm, coming up short on the innovation to chop down a solitary tree. They recall an unbelievable legend who ended up in an ice cave while pursuing the mythical beast monitoring the boundary to the dim. However long they don't cross the boundary, they can try not to disrupt the guidelines point by point in the no file. After arriving at the cavern, they track down sufficient ice to last the town a lifetime. However, something's off. They find the blue rose sword and bones of the ice mythical serpents encompassing a swarm of fortune. There was nothing in the legend about the mythical serpents. In the wake of social occasion, however much ice that they can convey, they understand there are different ways. Having failed to remember which one they came in through, they pick one that prompts the dull region. They hear the sound of fight and spot an honesty late evening battling a knight from the dim domain while riding mythical beasts. The uprightness knight chops a down the dull area knight and he exits the sky, arrival a couple of meters from the kids, connecting as though requesting help. Alice feels she ought to and starts to push toward him before the two young men can stop her. She excursions and her finger scarcely crosses the limit. Unexpectedly a head shows up, affirming their trepidation. Alice has broken the untouchable record. The honesty knight from the day preceding visits the town, yet this time the main thing he'll vanquish is a kid. Kirito attempts to make an interruption. In any case, Eugenio can't move. A singing aggravation in his right eye stops him in his. Soon after, Kitty-Gaya Kazuto awakens from a full plunge. He gets together with Shino at a bistro where she requests that he help her in the following BOB before Asuna shows up. Stressed over his state of being, Asuna checks an application that screens his vitals, calculating his new seasonal occupation was to be faulted. Shino asks and Kazuto makes sense of that. He's been working for an organization called RAF that is fostering another sort of full jump take. They call it a spirit interpreter, which utilizations ran lights, fundamentally what could be compared to a spirit rather than the client's mind, successfully coding momentary recollections onto the floodlight to make a more reasonable tactile experience. Because of the idea of the undertaking, Kazuto holds no recollections from the virtual world code-named Hidden World. While heading back home with Asuna, Kazuto floats going to America to explore the up-and-coming age of full jump tech. Just she would go along with him, obviously. The Soul Exchange project feels like an expansion of Kaya's work and he would prefer to move away from comparable undertakings. They're intruded on by a man who starts to request bearings when comfortable to face him about following them since they left the bistro. Dropping the demonstration, the man uncovers that he's a previous individual from Giggling Casket and thrusts toward Kazuto with the syringe. The same one that Demise weapon utilized on his casualties. Its kickoff. Kazuto pushes us with a well-being and attempts to battle off their attacker. In the melee, he's infused with the poison as his umbrella punctures the aggressor's leg. Yet it's past the point of no return. Kazuto implodes from heart failure. Chito awakens in a woodland without any memory of how he arrived. Based on the landscape and his dress, he figures he should be once again at the Hidden World, yet he shouldn't have any memory of this present reality. Assuming that is the situation, he coincidentally finds Eugene. However, he has no memory of him and can't figure out whether he's A.N.P. Circa, or then again not. He perceives no terms connecting with computer games, so it is unproductive to acquire data. He chooses to hold on until UGI Goodness completes his consecrated job for the day. He finds that the game menu is as yet open. Eugenio subtleties the occurrence with Alice, however, in his telling Kitty to there. Subsequent to making sense of his calling, Eugene was shocked when Kirito requests to help regardless of his blade abilities and experience. The tree is comparably tough. Endless supply of Eugenio's everyday obligation. They head to the town. The kid watching the door stops them. He starts to ridicule Eugenio's calling and expects Kirito can't recall his as a lost offspring of Vector. However, he's immediately taken care of after Kirito professes to be a fighter utilizing his blade to cut. Eugenio brings Katie to the congregation, where he meets Selka. While nodding off, he reasons rage probably taken the changes of children with the in-game speed increase of time. Ages of counterfeit generation would come full circle in sensible individuals. Particularly since YouTube claims it's been a long time since Alice vanished. Which just happened yesterday. Ire constant. The following day, the two young men head to the Jikesh 3. Kirito ponders Salka, who, it just so happens, is Alice's more youthful sister. After Alice was taken, she took over at the congregation, learning the hallowed expressions framework orders God as enchantment. Since the hatchet is for all intents and purposes pointless, Kirito inquires as to whether there is much else strong. After a short time, Yu-Gi-Oh gets back with the blue rose blade. He recovered 3 years after the occurrence. Kirito attempts to utilize it on the tree, yet can't do a lot. In any case, it actually beats the X. On the off chance that they can raise their article control authority, they ought to have the option to appropriately deal with the blade. That evening, Kirito got some information about her sister's vanishing. Clearly Eugene hasn't been a similar sense. Prior to leaving, Silka inquires as to why her sister was taken, since nobody will tell her. At the point when he awakens, Silka is mysteriously absent. Eugene quickly concludes she probably gone to the cavern where Alice broke the untouchable list. The two rush after her. They hear shouts from inside the cavern and find she's been stole by trolls. Yu-Gi-Oh freezes up, incapable to move as the trolls close. Katie told quiets him down and devises an arrangement to save Silka, furnishing them with swords. He starts chopping the trolls down while Yuget watches Katie to battle the troll chief. He actually wavers too. At the point when it looks like Kirito is going to lose, he at last acts quickly. He diverts the pioneer long enough for Katie to recuperate. However, he gets a deplorable physical issue. Kirito goes into a fury and takes out the troll chief, frightening away the rest. He unfastens Silka. However, when she sees Yu-Gi-Oh's state, she doesn't know whether her hallowed expressions can save him. All things being equal, Kirito chooses to move his own life energy to save Yu-Gi-Oh, practically dropping. He hears a voice advising him to come save her, and Kirito gets an odd inclination that they've met before. He gets some information about it the following day after the fight. Kirito's abilities are sufficiently high to swing the blue rose. Eugenia needs just to say stabilizer and requested that he train him. After some time, their blade abilities are sufficiently high to fall the tree as Eugenia land the last blow. Since Yu-Gi Gracious has effectively finished his calling, he has the opportunity to pick another one. He promises to turn into a fighter like Katie and travel to the cash flow to save Alice. Subsequent to expressing farewell to Selka, the two leave town without precedent for their lives. In reality, following the assault on Kazuo's life, Asuna and his family are informed that he might have super durable cerebrum harm and is in a state of extreme lethargy. Kiko-oka suggests that the main way they could treat him is in an exceptional office. However, his sister and Asuna can't find him. Subsequently, they examine what is happening with every one of their companions and reason that they should utilize the new soul interpreter tech. Following his heart screen, Asuna gets a ride from Move to the last area. However, it's an impasse. There's a welcome pat, and now that he's out of reach, he could be. Their smartest choice is investigating Fury. Obviously, Wrinkle Krogi Dukaya Buzz colleague fostered the innovation and could know where Raph is holding. Subsequent to getting an email, she chooses now is the right time to visit their mystery base in the sea, carrying her collaborator with her. Kiko-oka, amazed to see her as Rinko has been overlooking him as of recently. In any case, he's happy she came. Clearly she's one of 3 individuals expected to pull the venture off. Having met the second Tokaido, the lead engineer, Kiko-oka says the third part isn't accessible right now. Asuna then uncovers her character, eliminating her camouflage as Kink's colleague, and requests to see church building. Since none of different casualties made do the poisonous infusions, Kickstirred guarantees her that utilizing the STL is the best way to treat Cosette's cerebrum harm. They definitely realize that the soul exchange tech can contain spirits in what they call floodlights, yet why, all things considered, the genuine objective of the undertaking is to make a base up AI. Duplicating grown-ups consistently prompts precariousness and breakdown. They utilize the spirits of infants so the AI would grow up and pick up utilizing the seed. They made the hidden world to recreate a whole development utilizing the infant varies as models raised by 4 Fury workers. After they sped up time in the reenactment, society started to shape. Followed by an overseeing body who made the untouchable list, which is followed strictly by the general population to such an extent that they are unequipped for conflicting with it. That is the point at which they acquainted Kirito with the world, having him grow up with fake vacillates made one Alice break the no record. They required somebody with long stretches of involvement living in versus R universes. So normally they chose to utilize Kitty to research how these regulations occurred and why it's almost outside the realm of possibilities for the fake motion to break them. Kirito and Ugi Goodness spent the following 2 years in the hidden world, improving their blade abilities. They effectively sign up for the Sword Dominance Foundation, a vital piece of turning into an honesty knight. Once they accomplish that status, it permits them section into the focal church and an opportunity to save. In the hidden world, there are just 3 details: life, object control, authority, and framework control authority. They work like in most different games, yet there is a turn. The strength of one's psychological picture and the trust in their capacities awards power past simple numbers. A couple of days after the fact, Kirito competes with his coach Lina. She gets back to him out on holding the genuine capability of his blade style. She decided to prepare him since she likewise utilizes an unpredictable style throughout the course of recent years. Her trust in herself has developed as the subsequent sword seat. She's always been unable to beat the primary sword seat, leave untamed. However, she might have the stuff now that she doesn't view her own style as substandard. He vows to show her the real essence of his sword style as a graduation present following day. Ugi Goodness and Kitty to visit a craftsman they contracted to make a sword cut from the tip of the Giga Cedar's trunk, where a large portion of its energy was concentrated. The smith can scarcely lift the sword, not to mention employ it, so he offers it for nothing of Kitty token. Not exclusively can he unsee that, he even takes a swing. Intrigued, the smith respects his assertion. Regardless of the standards against rehearsing on a day off, Kirito chooses to evaluate further developed blade abilities he hasn't had the option to utilize up to this point during a 5-strike combo. He's rattled and tosses mud onto the uniform of the principal blade seat. Levante looks the alternate way in regards to rehearsing on a day off. Be that as it may, not for ruining his uniform, he challenges Katie to a duel utilizing genuine blades. Requiring assent from the 2 players, Levante proposes a first light-up match rather than holding back, by which the fighter doesn't finish notwithstanding his lord's admonitions. Kirito acknowledges the terms as he's the one being rebuffed. Lina illuminates him regarding the Levante family maxim: they accept that drawing the blood of their adversary permits them to ingest their solidarity. This isn't his most memorable fight battled with genuine blades. Youngster To sees this in real life when they start their duel. Obviously his power doesn't come from his details alone. Levantine draws on the power he trusts flows through his family's veins, wrapping him in deceptive flares, permitting him to utilize sword abilities. He quickly lurches toward Kirito, who has a couple of stunts of his own, impeding the strike and locking edges. Kirito won't lose like generally and utilizes the force of kinship and adolescent anxiety to expand his own, utilizing Levantine's method against him. His sword sparkles implanted with brilliant light. His determination makes the edge develop and become blue with the force of the devil tree behind him. He goes after the primary seat. Their duel is held back before either adversary causes serious harm. Kirito goes to mine the blossoms he's been developing as a gift for his lord, running into the 2 aristocrats who have bothered him and Eugene since they began at the foundation. He finds his grower desolated and starts to separate until he hears a similar puzzling voice from the. He discovers that just realizing framework orders isn't the best way to impact his general surroundings. Utilizing his creative mind and taking advantage of the existence power of the blossoms, he's ready to revive them, finding that the method utilized in fight isn't saved for annihilation. Kirito's ace understands that accepting her extraordinary style was mediocre was the explanation she would never beat, leave unmanageable, yet in the wake of watching her page's duel, she's certain she can beat the primary seat, paying little mind to strategy. During the last assessment, she at last wins. Against the main seat, snapping his training sword down the middle, she graduates as the top fighters in her year. Yu-Gi-Oh and Kirito are advanced now, having their own pages to prepare. They're not by any means the only ones. The aristocrats that have been tormenting them have been advanced as well. Kirito clarifies how for utilize one's creative mind or will to actually adjust themselves or regions of the planet while endeavoring to open this capacity. The 2 aristocrats, now first and second seat, concentrate on Eugene in the wake of seeing Kitty to give his lord the blossoms they obliterate. Umar, the subsequent seat, estranges Yu-Gi-Oh. He loses to Yuji, possessed a duel notwithstanding riots, finishing it short and considering it a couple of days after the fact. Eugenio asks why they haven't fought back. Kitty told reasons they would defy the norms on the off chance that they went after individual understudies, however he stresses they might be searching for an escape clause in the untouchable. The following day they have a cookout with their pages, discovering that there are positions inside the honorable class too. The lower positioning ones are blue bloods in name, just their pages relate the horrendous treatment of their companion. An individual page following Eugenio's duel with Umbra. Kirito makes sense of that regardless of whether something conflict with the untouchable file. It doesn't make it right. There are things that nobody ought to at any point expose an individual human to paying little mind to escape clauses in the law. Afterward, the two defy the aristocrats about the treatment of their pages, yet waste time as the aristocrats act ignorant and guarantee that they aren't in fact disrupting the guidelines. Subsequently, Kirito communicates his doubts that the matter isn't finished. They should design. Gio's page Bother admits that she is panicked at the chance of wedding a respectable who manhandles their strategic, influential place. Before long, Ugi gracious and Kirito's pages are late. Interestingly, dreading the most awful, Kirito gets through the window to research when Umber's page Veronica thumps on the entryway. Obviously in the wake of declining to oblige his oppressive and unreasonable orders, the two pages went to defy the vicious aristocrat. Eugenio rushes to their space to view as the two his and Kirito's pages restricted on the not-so-aristocrat's bed. They guarantee that it's inside their entitlement to rebuff them, but they consider fit as halted abruptly subsequent to being provided a request incapable to move. His right eye begins flashing red, sending a sharp aggravation all through his entire body, very much like the day he attempted to prevent the Honesty Knight from taking Alice. Eugene won't permit such rubbish to disregard the blameless. His right eye explodes, breaking the seal, and he sappers Umbrella arm. Rios blames this so as to kill Eugenio now that he's messed up the untouchable record. Unexpectedly, Kirito burst through the window, saving you rapidly. Determining what is happening, Kirito wages war against Rios. The two conflict in spite of Rio's solidarity. He can't hush up about his hands, and without them holding blood turns out to be very troublesome. Rios rides on the floor like a psycho, his body misfiring, as though the framework can't deal with what's happened. Despite the fact that they saved their pages, their violations can't be unwritten. A strange face shows up, referring to the infringement as it did when Alice crossed into the dim domain. The following morning, an educator mends Eugenio's eye prior to accompanying them to the Honesty Knight, holding on to whisk them away to there. The young men are stunned as the knight presents herself as a matter of fact, Alice. She strikes Eugeo when he draws near, not perceiving her lifelong companion. Their pages come to see them off, returning their swords and saying thanks to them one final time as they're traveled to the focal house of God fastened to a winged serpent. At the office, Munetician's stockpile pursues into a robot visiting Kazakhstan. Incidentally, they're attempting to make an actual vessel to hold a fluk light, making it simpler for the AI to pilot and look. Back in the hidden world, Yu-Gi-Oh and Kirito examined Alice's new condition and whether the voice in the cavern was. They sort out that since they can in any case examine the solidness of things, and since their chains have a similar item authority, hypothetically they ought to have the option to break each other's speculation, affirmed it's the ideal opportunity for an escape. They end up external on a nursery porch loaded up with roses. Now that they know respectability evenings don't hold their recollections, their objective changes. They need to protect Alice and figure out how to return her recollections right when they believe they're free. They run into an Honesty Knight. Evidently he's been sitting tight for them. It turns out he's Alice's follower. Their chains won't help them now. The knight uncovers his heavenly weapon, playing his hand too soon. The two breaks devise an arrangement. Be that as it may, it's no utilization. Something's off. Yu-Gi-Oh perceives the knight's name when they help him to remember his Beyond and article projects from his temple. Undoubtedly whatever is playing with his recollections, yet before they can learn much else, another trustworthiness knight fires a bolt into Kirito's foot. The two detainees choose to K.A. Tito hears a voice guiding them to an entryway that shows up. All of a sudden a monster library lies on the opposite side. The entryway vanishing behind them, a lady welcomes them, presenting herself as Cardinal, getting Katie to alone. She makes sense of that. She is familiar with the rest of the world and reality behind the aphorism church. He comes to understand she's a manifestation of the cardinal framework that he's as of now acquainted with. She makes sense of that the congregation's pioneer is a relative of the one rapt representative with additional wicked goals than the other three. Sovereign Ella found the hidden framework that shaped the reason for the consecrated. With this information, She started to build her framework control authority until she had sufficient power and devotees to begin the aphorism church by making the untouchable file. She ensured nobody could outperform her control authority approaching the finish of her life. Sovereign Ella at long last gotten to the total rundown of framework orders, really making herself undying. The cardinal framework was a danger to her power. Attempting to acquire a similar power level, she incidentally combined her trip with the actual framework. After a period, Sovereign Ella understood that her Flucklight memory limit had arrived at its cutoff. She expected to devise an arrangement to defeat such constraints. She called a kid endeavoring to supersede her recollections and override her own. Turns out it was her greatest slip-up. She didn't represent possibly making another divine substance. The cardinal framework contains a subprocess that goes about as blunder revision. When Sovereign Ella attempted to assume in command over the young lady's Flucklight, the subprocess became held inside the lady. Calling herself Cardinal in the wake of disappearing to the extraordinary library, Sovereign Ella started to utilize the amalgamation custom to make respectability evenings while Cardinal conveyed spies to acquire partners of her own for the Beyond 200. Regardless of this domineering guideline over the hidden world, Ralph never stepped in. Rather, they're involving it as a test. The dim domains are set to attack the human domain. Holding on to Flucklights of their own, Cardinal considered it significant to dispose of Sovereign Ella, the chairman, alongside the dim regions and the human ones. Notwithstanding that, she vows to save around 10 flight. Kirito consents to help her. However, he will not erase the whole world. He'll figure out how to save whatever number individuals as could be allowed. Cardinal makes sense of that. The crystal projecting from the trustworthiness knight is the way to saving Alice. They simply have to get the recollections the director has locked away before they set off. She gives them 2 knives, permitting her to project any holy workmanship on whoever's tissue they puncture. They as of now have weapons that rival the uprightness evenings. However, they actually need the capacity to perform amazing weapon expressions by opening the recollections and power imbued into the actual weapon. With that, they set out to arrive at the highest point of the church building to bring down the chairman and salvage Alice from her grip.